It was a night that no one in the stadium would ever forget. The year was 1991. The lights of the packed arena shimmered against the stage, where one of the most famous artists in history was about to perform. The crowd was electric, 80,000 hearts beating in unison, waiting for the king of pop to begin. But in the middle of that ocean of adoration, in the carefully guarded VIP section, a single voice rose above the cheers, not with love, but with mockery. A woman heckler shouted at Michael Jackson, ridiculing him in front of everyone. And what happened next would shock the world. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss another untold story. The woman's words cut through the music like a blade. The cameras didn't capture it, but the audience close enough could hear it, the sharp laughter, the pointed finger, the dismissive tone aimed directly at Michael Jackson. For any other performer, the natural response might have been anger, or perhaps ignoring the disruption altogether. But Michael Jackson was not like any other performer. Instead of retaliating, instead of letting the insult disrupt his art, he did something so unexpected, so disarmingly human, that the atmosphere of the entire stadium changed. Michael stopped. He turned toward the heckler. His face was calm, not defensive, not angry. The music faded, the lights softened, and 80,000 people watched as history unfolded, not through choreography or song, but through compassion. He walked closer, reaching out his hand toward the woman, as if inviting her into a space of understanding rather than conflict. This wasn't staged. This wasn't rehearsed. This was Michael Jackson, the man behind the legend, showing his heart in a moment of vulnerability. And then, something extraordinary happened. The heckler, who only seconds before had mocked and ridiculed, froze. Her laughter died on her lips. Her hand, once pointing in defiance, trembled. The look in Michael's eyes was not one of celebrity superiority, but of genuine care, of quiet forgiveness. He didn't ask her to leave. He didn't call for security. He simply spoke to her. The words, faint but clear to those nearby, carried across the stage like a whisper of truth. I came here to share love. If you can't feel it yet, that's okay. Maybe one day you will. The audience, stunned into silence, absorbed the weight of the moment. For a few seconds, the largest stadium in the world was quiet enough to hear the breath between heartbeats. And then, something shifted. The heckler's face softened. Her anger melted into shock, and shock into tears. She sat down, unable to continue her defiance. And 80,000 people witnessed not a clash, but a transformation. Michael Jackson's concerts have always been remembered for their grandeur, moonwalks that defied gravity, pyrotechnics that painted the night sky, and music that united millions. But those who were there in 1991 will tell you that the most unforgettable moment wasn't a song or a dance. It was this. A moment where compassion triumphed over hostility. Michael's life was filled with contradictions. The same man who filled stadiums across the world was also hounded by controversy, tabloid lies, and endless criticism. And yet, time and time again, his response was not retaliation, but resilience. Not bitterness, but kindness. In that stadium, before 80,000 eyes, Michael showed what it meant to live by his message: it's all for love. The story of that night reveals something about Michael Jackson that the world often overlooked. Beneath the glittering jackets and the perfectly timed dance routines was a man who carried both immense talent and immense pain. From childhood, Michael was shaped by the harsh discipline of his father, the pressure of fame, and the loneliness of a life where very few people truly knew him. The heckler's mocking voice was not new to him. It echoed the taunts, the gossip, the relentless attacks he endured from the public and the press. But what made Michael different was the way he chose to respond. Instead of perpetuating the cycle of anger, he disarmed it with empathy. Think about that for a moment. 80,000 people came to witness a superstar, but what they saw was something far more powerful, a human being showing the courage to love in the face of ridicule. For many fans, this moment became a story they carried for decades, whispered in fan clubs and shared across forums. It became one of those, you had to be there, memories, because it was never broadcast, never replayed on television. It lived in the hearts of those who saw it, like a secret chapter of Michael's legacy. And yet, when we piece it together, when we place it alongside his music and his words, it feels inevitable. Michael was always teaching through action, not just performance. Songs like Heal the World, Man in the Mirror, and Will You Be There weren't just lyrics, they were promises. That night in 1991, he kept that promise. Halfway through the concert, after the incident had passed, the audience felt a change. Fans who were used to screaming and dancing found themselves quietly wiping tears. The atmosphere was no longer just excitement, it was reverence. They weren't just watching Michael Jackson, the king of pop. They were watching Michael Jackson, the man, reaching out to heal even the harshest critic in the middle of his stage, and maybe that was always the deeper reason people loved him. Not just because he could dance like no one else, or because his music broke every record, but because he embodied something rare in the world of fame: vulnerability, kindness, and the belief that love could truly change people, even his enemies. As the years passed, the story of that heckler faded into legend. Who was she? Why did she shout at him that night? No one can say for sure. But what matters isn't her identity, it's what happened after. Many fans believe she left that concert forever changed, carrying with her a story she would never forget, that she mocked Michael Jackson, and he answered with compassion. And isn't that the essence of Michael Jackson's legacy? To leave people transformed, not just entertained. So when we remember Michael Jackson, it's not just the moonwalk, the diamond glove, or the record-breaking albums that matter. It's these fleeting, fragile, deeply human moments where the man behind the music showed us what he truly believed. On that night in 1991, 80,000 people cried, not because of a song, but because of silence. Not because of a dance, but because of compassion. A woman mocked Michael Jackson, and instead of anger, he offered his hand. And in doing so, he gave us a lesson the world still needs today: love has the power to disarm hate, and if you've made it this far, you already know the message is bigger than music. Michael's story is a reminder of what we can be when we choose compassion over cruelty. His stage was a mirror of life itself, and his response to the heckler is a story worth telling again and again. Before we end, let me ask you this: if the king of pop, standing before 80,000 people, could respond to mockery with love, what's stopping us from doing the same in our daily lives? The night was warm, the stadium lights blinding against the sea of fans. Michael Jackson stood at the center of the stage, framed by fire, smoke, and music. Every move he made seemed larger than life, every beat echoing through the hearts of 80,000 people. But then, in that unexpected silence, he leaned toward the heckler, breaking the unspoken boundary between artist and audience. What Michael did next was not just a performance, it was a revelation. The heckler's voice had been sharp, mocking, almost cruel. She had come into the VIP section, surrounded by fans who adored him, yet she had chosen defiance. To mock a performer on stage takes a kind of arrogance, but to mock Michael Jackson, in front of thousands who worshipped him, was an audacity no one could ignore. And yet, Michael did not meet her with the wrath of a superstar, or the ego of a king. He met her with something that disarmed everyone watching. He extended his hand, and in that single gesture, the atmosphere shifted. It was as if the entire crowd inhaled at once and forgot to breathe. Those close enough swore they saw her eyes tremble, her defiance falter. And in that fragile pause, Michael spoke words that no one would forget. "We're all here for love. That's why I'm here. That's why you're here too." The woman blinked, her hand still pointing, but her voice silent. She sat back down, almost defeated, not by anger, but by something far greater: compassion. Michael's concerts were legendary for their spectacle, but that night, the story wasn't about fireworks or choreography. It was about a lesson he taught without rehearsing it, without scripting it. The lesson that even when mocked, even when humiliated, one can choose grace over retaliation. Think about the power of that moment. In a world where fame often turns people into untouchable icons, Michael did the opposite. He came down to her level, acknowledged her pain, even though it was directed at him, and transformed the mood of an entire stadium. 80,000 fans witnessed not a superstar, but a man who lived his message. As the concert resumed, fans began to notice something remarkable. The energy in the stadium was different. The cheers were louder, the tears more frequent. Every lyric Michael sang that night carried more weight than usual. When he performed Man in the Mirror, voices trembled as fans sang with him, because they had already seen him live that message. When he moved into Heal the World, the audience wasn't just listening to music, they were experiencing the proof that compassion could heal. Michael Jackson didn't need to preach. He embodied it. To understand why this moment was so powerful, we need to step back into his life. Michael had been mocked before, not just by fans, but by the world. The tabloids called him Wacko Jacko. Late-night comedians turned him into a punchline. Journalists tore apart his appearance, his lifestyle, his family. For decades, he endured ridicule, yet he never struck back with violence or cruelty. Instead, he gave the world music, songs like They Don't Care About Us, which voiced the pain of injustice. Smile, which reminded us to hold on in the darkest times. Will You Be There, which revealed the loneliness of a man carrying the weight of the world. The heckler in 1991 wasn't the first person to mock him, and she wouldn't be the last. But that night, she became the perfect symbol of how Michael chose to handle ridicule. Not with bitterness, but with love. What most people don't know is that Michael often spoke privately about these moments. In interviews, in whispered conversations with friends, he admitted that the cruelty of the public hurt him deeply. But he also revealed something else, that he believed love was the only force strong enough to fight hate, and that is exactly what he proved on that stage. The audience's reaction was overwhelming. Grown men cried openly. Children clutched their parents' hands, asking why the woman had yelled at Michael. Teenagers stood frozen, realizing they were witnessing a moment that transcended music. That it wasn't just a concert anymore. It was history. By the end of the night, as Michael sang Heal the World, thousands of lighters flickered in the air, glowing like stars. The woman who had mocked him was no longer standing, no longer yelling. Instead, she was sitting quietly, watching him, her face wet with tears. She had come to tear him down. Instead, she left transformed, just like the rest of the stadium. This was Michael's true gift. Not just his ability to entertain, but his ability to change people. His music reached into souls, his actions melted defenses, and his compassion turned enemies into believers. Years later, when fans told the story of that night, they always came back to the same conclusion: Michael Jackson wasn't just the king of pop. He was a man who carried the weight of love, even when the world didn't deserve it, and maybe that is why his legacy continues to grow. Because beyond the headlines, beyond the scandals, beyond the myths, Michael Jackson left us something eternal, the belief that compassion can change lives. Let us imagine for a moment, you're in that stadium in 1991. The music stops. A heckler mocks him. And instead of anger, you see him extend his hand. You hear his soft words echo in your chest. Wouldn't you cry too? Wouldn't you feel the world shift in that instant? That is why 80,000 people cried that night. Not because of the songs. Not because of the spectacle. But because Michael Jackson reminded them, reminded all of us, that love disarms hate. And so, the next time you listen to Man in the Mirror, the next time you hear Heal the World, remember this story. Remember the night a woman mocked Michael Jackson, and his gentle reply silenced a stadium. Remember that compassion is stronger than cruelty, and remember that Michael Jackson's legacy is not just about music, it's about the lessons he left us when the spotlight dimmed. If this story touched your heart, let it live on. Share it. Speak it. Carry it. Because the more we tell these stories, the more his true legacy shines. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with the world. Help keep Michael Jackson's untold stories alive, because his music may have stopped, but his message must never fade.